Chapter 227. Because of Alex's instigation and encouragement, Emma spent the whole night tossing and turning, thinking about her business. She looked rather exhausted and fatigued the next morning due to the lack of sleep. After waking up, Emma hurriedly freshened herself up. Alex frowned at the sight and asked, "Dear, why don't you sleep in? What's the hurry?" "I'm going to Kotuk Enterprise. I must not be late." "Kotuk Enterprise? Another interview?" No. Emma shook her head and said gingerly after a short pause, "I'm going to try to look for some projects for myself." "Great," Alex smiled happily. "If you start a construction company, I'll be your first employee." "Do you think that starting a construction company is like making dinner?" "Funds and connections are the main criteria for the business to strive and survive," Emma said. "I want to start from a small office and draw design drawings for the construction company. When I've built a significant network for myself and generated enough capital funds, I'll register the company." Alex chuckled. "Money and connections are not a problem. I can help you start a company right now if you want." "No thanks," Emma rejected his kind offer without thinking, and then said seriously, "I want to try it myself first. Besides, what kind of resources could you possibly have, anyway? Starting a construction company is not a child's play." "I'm serious. I have the money to start a company as well as business connections. Right now, the Diamond Group's investment covers almost 80% of Oris Hill's businesses. It was a piece of cake to get some designing projects from construction companies." Emma assumed that he was just joking, and so, she waved her hand reluctantly and said, "You don't know anything about the construction industry. I'll think about the investment, just leave it to me." To register a construction company, she needed at least $20 million as startup capital and a significant amount of circulating capital. Where would Alex get that amount of money? Even if he did have the money, it was impossible for him to have connections in the construction industry. Alex was utterly speechless. His wife would rather start from scratch rather than utilize the readily available resources that were himself. He didn't know what else to say to her. Emma had just only left the house when Elaine, her mother, returned. She relied heavily on the Richard Group for her pension, so she had often visited the Richard Group over the past 2 days. Although Emma had cut her ties with the Richard family, Elaine didn't seem to share the same sentiment. On the contrary, she wanted to reconcile with them. Where did Emma go? She went to look for freelancing projects. What freelancing project? Do you really want to leave the Richard family? Elaine huffed in irritation. It was just a tiny misunderstanding. Why do you want to make a fuss out of it and cut ties with them? We've become the laughingstock in the city. Trump stared at Elaine in disbelief and bewilderment. Darling, what did Lady Richard do to you when you were there? Did you knock your head against the wall after all the scolding? Are you out of your mind? What? No. I didn't lose my senses, mind you. Elaine threw herself onto the sofa as she growled, "Tomorrow, go to the Richard family villa with me and apologize to Lady Richard. She is your mother, and Harold father is your brother. Blood is thicker than water. How could you cut ties just like that?" Trump glared at her and said in a slightly furious tone, "They wanted to sell my house, and they wanted to rob Alex's villa. They have never regarded me as part of the Richard family ever. If you want to apologize, you can go alone. I won't step into their house ever again." Elaine grew angrier when Trump, who was always so kind and mild-tempered, became so stubborn and firm. She turned to Alex and said, "Alex, your dad is an old, stubborn dog. You be the judge. They are mother and son, they are brothers. Family quarrels are soon mended. Don't you think it's a little too childish and trifling to sever ties just like that? Besides, I need to count on the Richard Group for my pension. See? She's crazy. They want to seize my property and rob Alex's villa. They even want Emma to divorce Alex and marry another man. Don't you see how insane they are?" Trump stood up and shouted indignantly. Did they hypnotize you or something when you were there? How could you simply believe everything they said? Alex's head was tingling in pain as he stood in the middle of the feud, thus, he quickly blurted out an excuse to get out of the miserable situation. Emma asked me to pick her up. I have to go now.